Could you live with yourself if your child got another child sick? I mean, really sick, had complications, even death?
I could live with myself very easily. It's a very unfortunate thing that people die, but unfortunately people die, and I'm not going to put my child at risk to save another child. I'm not going to sacrifice the well-being of my child.
That is the man who started the anti-vaxxer campaign. And despite the best efforts of those with a serious amount of intelligence and fact behind them, there remain those who refuse to vaccinate their children against measles and many other curable diseases, putting millions of kids at risk. And now we have the possibility of certain doctors, those charged with keeping the public health intact, refusing to vaccinate for what some only see as stunningly bad reasons. Our guest is director of the Division of Medical Ethics at New York University Langone Medical Center's Department of Population Health. Dr. Arthur Caplan joins us. Dr. Caplan, good to see you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Love the article you wrote recently, because here was your opinion. We caught it from the Washington Post. Revoke the license of any doctor who opposes vaccination. Dr. Caplan, I got to tell you, just looking at that headline, though, stops you, because you would believe that any physician, well-trained physician, would know all the dangers, all the benefits, all the downfalls of every single thing that they do. So to them to say, I am not going to vaccinate a child or somebody for measles, that flies in the face of everything we've been told that doctors stand for.
I agree. And the reason I think you lose your license is if I come with my child and say, should I vaccinate my child? And you say, no, you don't need to, or the vaccines are so dangerous that it doesn't make any sense to, or, as one or two doctors have said, better to get the diseases than to get the vaccine, then I don't have informed consent. I can't make sound decisions based on the real facts. That's where these physicians who are anti-vaccine get themselves in trouble, and that's why I think their licenses should be in jeopardy, because they're not informing patients properly.
Well, let's be very fair here, because as your article points out, we are not talking about a preponderance of doctors across America. We are probably talking about a minuscule amount of doctors who believe that this is what they need to do. Very few indeed. Why, though? I mean, and this is the thing that I'm stunned at by the article. Why would somebody who knows that measles can kill, it has in the past, in the 80s it did, it certainly did, there was some really bad epidemics here. What in the name of the Hippocratic Oath would make them think that this is a good idea, like these people whom you quote, saying that your child can skip the shots because maybe they can become immune on their own? This is lunacy.
It is. It doesn't square with any CDC information, American Academy of Pediatrics, WHO, you name it. Nobody believes those things. Nobody. So I think doctors, these few out on the edge of reason, have somehow or another convinced themselves that either there's a market for me to go out there and speak for people who are convinced that their kids got sick due to vaccination. So that's a role I'm going to play. I'm going to be an advocate. I think it's a sad role. Don't think you're doing those parents or the kids any favors, because we're not really finding out what made them autistic or why did they get sick in the way that they did. You're looking at vaccines, which isn't the place to look. And I think some of them basically have deluded themselves into believing that somehow these vaccines are bad, but they aren't people, you know, some of the people I quoted, they're cardiologists, they're people that aren't in the infectious disease field, they're not vaccine experts, so maybe they picked it up off hearsay and rumor. Very irresponsible, but that's the best I can do in explaining it.
What should the general public do? You're a mother, you're a father, you have your child, you happen to take them to a doctor, and the doctor says, I'm going to suggest that you not get the vaccine because it could be, as you point out in the story, full of harmful things like chemicals. What does the consumer do?
The reason I'm laughing at that is chemicals covers a lot of ground. You know, the food we eat is full of chemicals. Everything's full of chemicals. So when you're talking that way, you hear somebody say that sort of thing, move to another doctor. I mean, literally, just get up, walk out, say thanks. I got to go find somebody else.
But shouldn't we be actually trying to find these doctors, and isn't there a way that we can report them? Because this is a kind of a doctor that can cause harm and that can lead to somebody's death.
Remember, anybody can report someone to the medical board in their state. You don't have to get involved in complicated legal processes. They'll pick up the investigation. If somebody says to you as a physician, better to get the disease than it is to take the vaccine, call the medical board. They're in the phone book. They're online. You can find them easily and just say, Dr. X said this to me. You should go check him out, her out. They're not fit to practice.
Dr. Caplan, there's a couple of things I wanted to get your opinion on. First of all, there are members of Congress now who are taking the floor and they are questioning the CDC and they are continuing to hammer away that this measles epidemic may be because of illegals crossing the border. I haven't heard from one medical official that any of this could possibly be true.
It's the stupidest thing I've heard in a long series of stupid things that have accompanied the measles epidemic. Look, the vaccination rate for measles in Mexico is higher than it is in the United States. They have more of a chance of getting the measles by coming to the United States than they do bringing us the measles. The whole thing is ludicrous.
What about these wonderful human beings in California right now who are having what they call measles parties? Intentionally exposing unvaccinated children to a person with measles could put them at grave risk. They're inviting parents to bring their kids to these parties.
Yeah, I think that's a form of child abuse. I think Child Protective Services should get involved. Why would you ever give your kid a disease that could cause them to be hospitalized, could cause them to get pneumonia, as you pointed out, Ed, could cause them to die? It's rare, but it happens from the measles due to encephalitis. That is the height of parental irresponsibility. It's like belonging to a nutty cult.
All right, let me give you one last thing with a minute left to go. We're just getting word that San Francisco commuter rail passenger with measles rode the train to and from work for 3 days while infectious last week, and this is from public health officials in San Francisco. This is an adult. This is not a child here, and this is the disease out in the open.
Measles is super infectious. You can get that one from being in the same room as somebody, or even in a room where somebody just left, much less a contained space like a train car, some kind of closed space like an automobile. Traveling around with measles is irresponsible. Traveling around with measles, if you really know you have the measles and you make others sick, I think you're liable for the harm you cause. I think the state and the city should show up and say, you know what, we had to track down all your contacts. It was pretty expensive. Here's a bill for $200,000, you idiot.
If you thought Ebola was infectious, people, look at what's happening here with the disease as simple as measles.
This is way more infectious than Ebola.
I'm glad you and I together use the word stupid because, quite frankly, it needs to be used a little more often in this case. Dr. Caplan, always a pleasure to have you on the show. I look forward to talking again. All right, take care. The state of Alabama is being ripped in half over the issue of gay marriage. We've heard the pundits, we've heard from the politicians, now hear from the people and want to talk to them every single day. We'll do that when we return right here on MidPoint.